The Black Beast Disease: Hunting Wild Boar and Gun Packs in the Foothills of the French Pyrenees. Written by James A. McConville, Huntsman of the West Sussex Warreners. Narrated by Anna Edwards. Part 1. In November 2024, we flew from Stansted Airport to Toulouse, where we were due to meet Jean-François, a French huntsman, also known as Jeff. My mother had met Jeff on Facebook a number of years back and bought a Basset Fauve de Bretagne puppy named Boris from him. She had it imported to England, as she wanted a stud dog and a fresh bloodline for her breeding programme. Jeff is a well-known breeder in France, producing hunting hounds primarily for boar hunting, but his pack also hunts deer, rabbit, and hare. My mother used the dog several times and eventually gave it to me to hunt in Sussex, where I use it for driven fallow shooting, as well as hunting rabbits and fox as part of the 2-hound gun pack. Jeff would regularly message me asking for updates about Boris, and we would exchange pictures of our hunting experiences and how our hounds performed in the field. At first I was very impressed with Jeff's English, which seemed perfect, but I later discovered he was using a translation app and could not speak a word of English. Tom, another member of the West Sussex Warreners, and I were travelling to France, and neither of us spoke any French, so this was going to be interesting. We used an app called Deep L to communicate and translate. Jeff picked us up at the airport. Communication was slow, as I had to speak into the app, translate, and play it aloud in French. Then he would do the same. We later found it easier using 2 phones, one for English to French translation and the other for French to English. As we drove to his house, he gave us the paperwork required to hunt in France. I had already sent over my firearms certificate, insurance, and deer stalking certificate months beforehand, which were needed to obtain permits. In France, you must have a permit to hunt, and this applies to all forms of hunting, including hound work. The permits, alongside with insurance certificates, had to be carried at all times during the trip, as they could be checked by the authorities. The drive took around 40 minutes, and a conversation centered on hunting, sharing stories and experiences. It was clear that all 3 of us shared a passion for it. We arrived at his house, which had a fenced area of around 2 acres, with his kennel block attached. He had 4 kennel sections and 12 Basset Fauve de Bretagne hounds. It was a professional setup. Like my kennels at home, he had hunting trophies displayed, including antlers and a boar figure. The kennel name, roughly translated as Boar of the Woods, was displayed on the side. He introduced us to his hounds, showing which ones were related to my dog Boris. Shortly after we arrived, another hunter named Philippe joined us, and would also be travelling with us. We loaded 6 hounds into the truck, which had a back similar to an I-4 Williams setup, much like what I use at home. Tom travelled with Philippe, while I went with Jeff and the hounds. We had an 80-kilometre journey to a village called Grain, and each day we travelled from there to the foothills of the Pyrenees to hunt. The journey took around 2 hours. All we talked about was hunting, comparing England and France, and discussing how hunting forms part of our rural culture, though it is clearly approached very differently in each country. In France, hunters are highly respected and have defined responsibilities. Like fox hunting in the UK, areas are divided so each hunting association manages its own land and wildlife. In this region, boar are considered pests and can cause significant damage. The association is responsible for controlling their numbers. You may only hunt if you're a member of an association and hold a valid permit. Even landowners cannot legally hunt their own land without membership. This system dates back to the French Revolution, when hunting rights were extended beyond the aristocracy. Some laws stood out to me as if wild boar damage farmland, the farmer can charge the hunting association, which must cover the cost. This incentivizes population control. Associations also receive regular call-outs when boar are spotted on farmland and must respond quickly, as the animals travel long distances. Previously, if a vehicle collided with a boar, the association was liable for the damage, though I understand this is no longer the case. There was even a sign as we entered the village, which roughly translated something along the lines of, Respect the countryside, respect the farm animals, and respect the hunters. This is our culture. People in the UK need a better understanding of hunting and the respect it commands, as we have an important role to fulfill here, just as French hunters do in France. We stayed in a chalet about 2 minutes from the main house where some of the other hunters and Jeff were based. That evening, we met more members, none of whom spoke English. Communication relied heavily on the translation app, but we shared photos and experiences. They all wanted to show us images of the boar they had shot and of the hunting hounds. These men hunted every weekend, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, often leaving their families at home at the weekends during the hunting season. The next morning, we were collected at 6:45 for a quick breakfast. I was issued a rifle and given instructions on its use. It was unlike anything I had used before, compact with a heavy round and red dot scope. It was going to take some time to adjust to using this, especially using a target on the move. Initially, I had told Jeff that Tom and I were only interested in watching the hounds, but he could not understand why we would travel so far and not shoot. I agreed to take part while Tom chose to follow the hounds. At the meet, there were around 30 members, all wearing orange, which is legally required for large hunts involving firearms. This was driven ground shooting, with guns pointing downwards, unlike driven bird shooting in the UK. The French were very welcoming, and each time someone arrived, they would go around and shake everyone's hand. Permits and insurance were checked, followed by a safety briefing detailing hound movements and gun positions. I counted 4 packs of hounds, Jeff's Basset Fauve de Bretagne, a pack of beagles, and other mixed hound packs. The hounds were transported to different areas of the mountains, while the shooters were dropped off at various posts. My journey to my post was short. It was only about a 5-minute drive from the meet. I was dropped off on the side of a hill overlooking a valley. It was a stunning landscape. My post was a small frame, a bit like a freestanding high seat used for stalking, less than 2 meters off the ground. I could see Philippe about 300 meters to my left, just a fleck of orange from his jacket. Behind me was one of the other hunters we had met the night before, Mario. He must have been about 200 meters behind me, again clearly visible in his orange jacket. In France, huntsmen working hounds often carried firearms while hunting boar for protection. Jeff carried a short, double-barreled carbine. It was used only in emergencies, such as defending against aggressive or injured boar, or protecting the hounds. He did let me fire it one day after a hunt. It had a tremendous kick and was extremely loud. Many hunters and hounds have been attacked and injured in the past. If a boar thinks it has a chance against the hounds, it will not run, but it will turn an attack. This is rare, but it can happen. In these situations, the huntsman will shoot the animal. Back on my post, things started to settle down. It was still very cold and windy, and I was questioning whether I had dressed appropriately for the occasion. As the sun began to rise over the mountains, it started to warm up. The views of the mountains, the forest, and the valley looked incredible as the sunlight spread across the landscape. By this stage, the wind had begun to drop. After about 30 minutes on my post, I began to hear the hounds moving. It started with the sound of their bells. The hounds wore protective high-visibility jackets to guard against injuries from tusks. When a boar attacks, it makes a sideways upward motion with its head, using its tusks to slice at whatever it's targeting. These jackets provided some level of protection against that. The bells helped the shooters identify the hounds when they were in cover and also helped push the boar along. Each hound was fitted with a Garmin GPS collar so they could be tracked. Both the bells and the GPS collars are tools I also use with my own pack of hounds back in Sussex, and they are essential. Soon a pack opened up in the valley, clearly on boar. At the beginning of the day, I had been told that we were mainly hunting boar, but we could also shoot roebuck, hare, and foxes. Mario signalled to me and pointed in a direction. A boar had been seen. The hunters carried radios and were all in communication with each other. Boar are very sensitive to smell and sound, so it's important to keep quiet on the post. The atmosphere quickly intensified. The cry of the hounds could be heard in all directions. The hounds had found in multiple locations around the mountains. I had never heard multiple packs speaking in different areas all around me like this before. I got my binoculars out and began to scan the landscape. Then I saw what I had come here for. A group of hounds, including several Basset Fauves de Bretagne, were working their way through the ground in front of me. They were not on a scent, simply methodically covering the area, seemingly unconcerned by the activity of the other hounds a kilometre away. This was the first time I had seen the Basset Fauves de Bretagnes working in France, and I was overcome with emotion. This was exactly what I had come for. I had travelled to France to learn how the French work their Bassets and to improve my own practice. At that point, I had only hunted my hounds for perhaps 4 seasons. I had whipped in with many packs before this, including beagles and mink hounds, but this was something very different. The small ginger hounds were now about 20 metres ahead of me. Several others were with them, resembling a different type of Basset that I did not recognise. I was fairly sure these were not Jeff's hounds. A Basset Fauve de Bretagne glanced back in my direction before moving off with the rest of the pack, and that was the last time I saw them during that drive. Suddenly to my left, I heard another pack of hounds open up, probably about 500 metres away on the other side of the valley. These hounds were in the woods and were on another boar. The pack was moving from left to right. I could see the Huntsman in orange down in the valley controlling them. Then I heard the first crack of rifles echoing around the mountains. To my left, I heard Philippe take his first shot, followed immediately by a squeal as a boar was hit and went down. I was suddenly filled with adrenaline. This was real, and this was happening. I was boar hunting. More cracks of shots went off, and more sounds of hounds were speaking could be heard. It was really intensifying now. It was getting exciting. Again, more shots rang around the valley. The rifles in France did not have moderators, and this made shots sound a lot louder than the rifles we used in the UK. This was a sound that I was not used to. Then a fox came up in front of me. It saw me and darted to my left. It was too quick for me. I took the shot and was just behind it. I was annoyed with myself as I remembered what the hunters had told me the night before about the possibility of a boar behind it. They had said that boar often follow a fox and that it was better to leave the fox for a higher chance of getting a boar. It did not matter. I was here to see the hounds. Anything else was a bonus. I was watching Philippe through my binoculars. He raised his rifle and fired off another shot. These guys can shoot. I tried to see the dead boar in the valley but could not spot it. Then there were shots behind me, this time from Mario. He took another shot, but he missed again. The other hunters had joked about him the night before, saying he was not a good shot. I knew he was, as he had shown me many photos of his successes. The shooting continued, shots echoing around the mountainside, and this went on with the hounds speaking for another 2 to 3 hours. By this stage, the hounds were beginning to quieten down, and there were fewer gunshots. I could see another huntsman in the distance. He had a larger hound with him, much bigger than the Bassets and Beagles I had seen earlier. I believe it was a Griffon Fauve de Bretagne. It was a strong-looking hound with a much deeper voice when I had heard it speak earlier. The huntsman was about 400 metres away from me when he raised his horn and blew. Soon after, I could hear more horns being sounded around the mountain. The hunt was over. It was time to find the shot boar. I got off my post and started walking towards where Philippe was. He had already left his post and was down in the valley, dragging the boar that he had shot earlier. It was a huge, magnificent-looking beast. I got him to pose for me and took a photograph. Then Mario arrived in a small 4x4 with a basket on the back. The French hunters' vehicles all had a basket on the rear, where they would place whatever they had shot. I do not think they like getting blood in the back of their trucks, unlike the English, who just throw the kills into the back of their pickups. Mario and Philippe lifted the boar onto the basket and secured it with a strap. I was surprised that they did not gut the animal in the field. Instead, they took the whole beast back to the farmhouse that served as a clubhouse. There they had a room in an old farm building for butchering. The village and its buildings looked as though they had not been touched in 300 years. Each building was as old as the next. It was a beautiful sight. In the side room that they used for butchering, there were hoists and tables fitted with chopping boards. It was almost like a conveyor belt, with all the hunters getting involved and breaking the beasts down. There must have been at least 10 to 15 boar shot that morning, as well as a roe deer. Each animal was processed, broken down, and distributed among the hunters so that each had their own share. Strangely, in France, hunters are not allowed to put their meat into the food chain in the same way deer stalkers do in the UK. I was informed that most wild boar meat in France is imported, which seemed to frustrate the French hunters, especially as wild boar are abundant there. Boar hunting in France is deeply rooted in their culture. It is a way of life and something truly unique. There is an old saying in France that once you have been boar hunting there, you catch something called the black beast disease. This means that once you have gone boar hunting, you cannot stop coming back. I completely understood this. I finally met up with Tom. He looked shattered. Jeff had worn him out. It was a completely different experience following bassets in the French mountains compared to following beagles or foxhounds in the Sussex countryside. Tom described Jeff as a machine, never stopping, ploughing through cover, fueled on black coffee and whatever whiskey was still running through his veins from the night before. Tom and Jeff were a little late getting back. Tom explained that one of the hounds had chased a boar for 5 kilometres and had gone well beyond the area they were meant to be hunting, into a neighbouring village. It had been tracked on GPS and they drove out to pick it up. The hound was a little tired and Jeff had given it a shot of something in its mouth to give it a boost of energy. For the final day of the hunting trip, we met at a different location. The hunting association we were with was actually made up of 2 groups, each with its own clubhouse. They all hunted and socialised together. The socialising was just as important to them as the hunting, as I had learned the night before. The previous evening had been spent at the same farmhouse we had used during the day. We cooked wild boar over an open fire, ate it with chips and drank copious amounts of wine, and Ricard, so I was feeling a little worse for wear that morning. This time I was posted in a field rather than on a tower. I was given a seat, and the next gun was positioned to my right. I was clearly told where it was safe to shoot and where it was not, as well as the direction the boar were expected to come from. I was also instructed that if a boar came through, I should stop the hounds and send them back. It was a quiet morning, but about halfway through I saw the first live boar of my weekend. It was a big beast. There were only 1 or 2 hounds in the forest behind it, and I could hear them speaking. These were the larger hounds I had seen the day before. I recognised their voices. As the boar came out, it moved from left to right. I raised my gun and took a shot, but I hit the ground just below it. My shot woke up the hunter on the next post, about 200 metres to my right, who had fallen asleep. The boar ran off to safety. We later laughed about him sleeping. I stopped the hounds and turned them back. I realised afterwards that the shot had been a little out of range, but I was pleased to have seen one, even if I was slightly disappointed not to have taken my first. I certainly needed more practice with that type of rifle. It meant only one thing, though, that I would have to come back to France next year. I was already showing all the signs of contracting the black beast disease.